Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Hey Coach Radio. This is episode number 110, and Coach Zach joins us back in the HQ this morning to bring you guys a bodybuilding focused episode where we discuss patience inside of bodybuilding competition preparation, proper pre-workout supplementation and hydration, and natural sport supplementation. I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions for us, you can always hit me up on social media at William_Grazione on Instagram, William Grazione on Facebook, and William Grazione or The Educated Dieter on YouTube. If you are an avid listener of the show, share our podcast with your friends and followers, and we will be sure to share it on our social media platforms. All you got to do is tag me, and I'll make sure to reshare that on my page. Our goal here is simple. Each week we provide you the information and experience in the nutritional coaching world to help you apply the knowledge and gain the tools you need to change your life forever, essentially making you an educated dieter. Coach Zach, what's up, man?
Hey, doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing well today. I appreciate you driving all the way up from South Tampa.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Happy to be here.
So let's get a check-in going. Coach Zach, how are you? How's the last week been?
Good. Things have been going real well. Back in normal routine. So it's going to be a while before I travel again, thankfully. Kind of burnt out on being gone. So it's nice to be home. I definitely flourish in routine.
Yeah.
And it's easier to stay in routine when you're not traveling. So especially right now when I'm trying to put on some size and build some muscle and things like that, it's tough when you're gone. I feel like when I'm gone, even though I'm trying to get my meals in, I usually come back always lighter. So I end up losing weight every time I travel.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think that oftentimes, even with our clients that are trying to execute on a program, they're traveling a lot and stuff like that, especially during these months because, I think kids just went back to school, right? And normally over the summertime, parents are taking trips and they're traveling, and a lot of, obviously all of our clients have physique goals. Some of them are into bodybuilding, some of them maybe not. But I guess, do you have any tips for people that maybe when they're traveling and stuff like that? Like, what would be some of your best tips that you utilize when you travel, being that you are very hyper-focused right now on bodybuilding?
Yeah, and so a lot of times, first thing I always recommend my clients is focus on trying to seek out lean protein sources.
Right.
A lot of times coming prepared is the best way you can do it whenever you're traveling. So a lot of times, whether that's packing your protein powder, maybe even if you have to, pack some bars and things like that, I would do that. And then, especially for the ones dieting, I understand that they're, wanting to experience, these social events and things like that. So a lot of times I tell them, whenever you're not eating in a social setting, try to keep things a little bit lighter, whether that's lean protein sources and veggies throughout the day. So then at that point they can eat a little bit more intuitively and things that are a little more hyper palatable, specifically at dinner with friends and family and things like that. Not being the weirdo that has to show up with their food scale to dinner. So,
well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Travel tips from Coach Zach Ritchie on how to hit your protein goals. Love it, man. Love it. Well, super happy to hear that you're doing well, man. Obviously, I know that every week we have a lot of check-ins that we get to, and every week that we go through these check-ins, there are a lot of questions that arise. There's a lot of things that maybe people are struggling with or things that people wanted more information about. And so that's how we create these podcast episodes, ladies and gentlemen, is we listen to you guys, we listen to our clients, we listen to the questions and concerns that you have, and then ultimately we share those experiences with our audience here on Hey Coach Radio.
Things been going for you. Yeah, I know that you had 100 so people, it seems like, at your house.
It was like 50 people. So weekend, my son and my daughter, we celebrated their birthday party. They had one big kind of all-inclusive birthday party and invited a bunch of kids from the baseball team and some of my daughter's friends. And all in all, I think we had 50 people hanging out at my house, mainly in the backyard, though. Swimming in the pool, jumping in the lake, rope swinging, kayak riding, holding snakes, all that good stuff. So I think everybody had a really great time, and I know that, the normal life that I suppose my kids live is kind of new for a lot of the people that are that came over for the very first time. Maybe it's like first time seeing a snake or a snapping turtle or holding lizards and jumping in lakes and swinging off rope swings and riding in kayaks. Like that's brand new to them. So I think for most of them, it was a really fun experience.
Yeah.
And I love the opportunity to be able to have them do that more often because, you know, if I'm an 8-year-old kid, like what's funner than having all my best friends come over and just have a party?
It's the best.
You
Most
know?
kids are used to being entertained by a screen, and then to come over to your house and experience the way your kids live, which sadly to say is unique nowadays. You know, just being a kid, running around, using your imagination, and you know, playing, being active. So.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, as a parent, and I'm sure there's a lot of parents that listen to the podcast, but like, you know, that's still an issue, right? Like, you still have to have boundaries over screen time and stuff because, you know, in all honesty, man, these devices are created to be addictive.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, like, you scroll a certain way or you swipe a certain way, and then over the course of time, if you scroll or swipe hundreds of times a day, your finger just becomes like programmed to do that thing, and then before you know it, you know, I could easily go home and I could be like, hey, what's the screen time? And I'd be like, oh, I was only on it for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it ends up being a couple hours.
Have you seen that? I know it's something that has been a trend lately, but people have been showing their pinky fingers that have been like permanently bent because of how they hold their phone.
Is
like,
that a thing?
You set it here on that.
Seriously?
And so then like they'll put up their pinkies and you see a huge indent or their pinkies like permanently bent.
No way.
Just because of how often they've been holding their phone.
That's correct. No, I have not heard of that at all.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that, you know, based off of the amount of people that I work with, and granted, some of them are also nutrition coaches too, registered dietitians, physicians, online coaches, and stuff like that. The screen time, even for adults, this isn't just for kids, man, but the adults, it's really taking away from their ability to execute on the things that they want to be able to achieve in their goals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you're on screen time, let's just say you're on your screen for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours plus per day, like what could you have done with that amount of time?
Yep.
You know, how much time are you wasting? How much time could you have possibly done something else? Now, if you're still achieving your goals and you're on your phone, it's cool. But if you're not achieving the things that you want to be able to achieve, and we're trying to figure out why we don't have enough time to do it, like that's the issue.
Oh yeah.
You know, because it's like you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, if I'm staring at this thing for this many hours, that's a problem. In this amount of time, I could have gotten my steps in. I could have went to the gym. I could have stopped by the grocery store to get the food that I want to feel my best. Probably could have also read some kind of really positive book for maybe 10 pages.
Yeah.
You know, could have also maybe spent more time with my kids or with my wife or with your husband or, you know, whatever it is. And so that's something that I think from I guess you would say a personal development perspective is like management of time.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
It's an escape, you know, our phones, but whenever that escape is causing procrastination, it's going to lead to anxiety.
Sure.
And so we see that quite often.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's dive into this podcast episode here. In today's show, we are discussing not being in a rush to compete or taking the time to build the muscle that you should build. Now, keep in mind, this isn't just for competition prep. This is also for fat loss phases. So don't be in a rush. Take the time to build the muscle. That's going to be the first topic. The second topic is going to be going from dehydrated to actually being full in the gym. What are some things that you can do immediately to improve how you look in the gym, your performance in the gym, ultimately making sure that you are as vascular as you could be, you get really good pumps in the gym, and it doesn't negatively impact your gym performance. And then the third topic of conversation for the day is going to be natural sports supplementation that we recommend. So, Coach Zach, man, let's go ahead and let's dive in. We were talking about a client of yours right before this podcast episode started, and it's not being in a rush to compete. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. And so we were just discussing one of my clients currently who, you know, just we liked what he said, and that's just more of the fact that he said he's not in a rush.
Right.
And so he's really enjoying the process he's in right now. He's a younger guy, just kind of got the bug to, you know, want to compete, but he's wanting to put the time in to have something to present, worth presenting. And so we've been working together now for, you know, probably 9-10 months or so. And I would say he's a hyper responder more than anything, just because the fact he's so new to this. But we've seen him already just put on probably, you know, 30 plus pounds, which I know is crazy. Mm-hmm. And so it's unique, but it's a huge testament to his adherence, his consistency, and his effort. Mm-hmm. He trains so hard. He actually trains at the same gym I do, so I personally get to see him get a step in or give him advice whenever I'm there. Usually ask questions, things like that. But he's just growing on a weekly basis, growing, and in no rush. He wants to, top out whatever he can in this off season, even though he hasn't had an actual season, but really wants to take his time so that he has something to present, as far as showing off the effort and his consistency. And so,
Yeah, I think in the sport of bodybuilding, whether it be natural bodybuilding or enhanced bodybuilding, the best tip of advice that I could give anybody, I don't care what category you compete in, whether it be bodybuilding, figure, bikini, any of the other classes that are available now, nobody's going to come up to you at the end of the show and say, like, you know what, you were just too muscular.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So take the time to build the muscle. One of the best things that I did was just play football and sports
yep,
growing up as a kid, and I didn't know at the time that all the conversion of how much muscle I was building playing football would ultimately show on stage.
yeah,
But that's kind of all the heavy squatting and the power cleaning and the bench pressing and the pull-ups and the sled work and all that kind of stuff. It all eventually came to fruition
yep,
once I decided to compete in bodybuilding. And when I had the idea to compete in bodybuilding, it wasn't like I just said, "Oh, I'm going to start a prep right now." I took at least a year of serious bodybuilding before I decided to even step on stage. Now,
yeah,
granted, I was already, pretty muscular, pretty big playing college football. But then I said, but it's not specific
mm-hmm,
to bodybuilding, right? So, like, I never really trained like lateral delts, rear delts, or was very like biceps. I never trained
yeah.
really
You're doing
any of
power
that stuff.
movements, yeah,
Right, I was just doing a lot of power building, like sprint work, pushing sleds, pulling stuff, trying to get as fast as possible. But when I converted that over to bodybuilding, I started to isolate the muscles a lot more. And then I noticed like an extreme amount of growth within that first 12 months, just focusing on what I was trying to do. And then at that point, I was like, all right, I think I could probably be on stage around like 170 something.
yep,
And as a natural bodybuilder, that's actually a pretty good weight for
100%,
somebody that's like 5'9".
yeah,
And I was like, all right, I think I could, let's see what it looks like when I get down to 180.
yep,
And then ultimately, when I got down to 180, I was like, I probably only got 5 more pounds to go. And I was happy that I decided to put that much work in because my weight on stage was at least 10 pounds heavier than most of the other people that I was competing against
exactly,
in my height class.
yep,
Now, granted, there were guys that weighed more than me in the taller class, but I was happy that I had that 10 extra pounds of lean mass because on stage it stood out.
yep,
Slightly wider delts, more mass, more density, larger quads, glutes, hammies, all that kind of stuff. And so, for what it's worth, definitely make sure that if you have the idea to compete in bodybuilding or even go into a fat loss phase, make sure that you're taking the time, you're putting in the work consistently over time to ensure that you have the muscle that you want.
yep.
You know,
What are some of the common reasons that you see, or I've had specific clients that are, in an urge to rush to the stage?
validation? They have something to prove. Now, granted, when I was bodybuilding, we didn't have all the social media outlets that we have now, right? So even take like there's a fair amount of people that have never competed, but they're fitness influencers, and some of them are even famous.
Yep.
But you've never competed. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that now it's more about
Notoriety.
the self notoriety
Yep.
versus like you're just bodybuilding for the passion and the love for the sport. Like even if you look at the gym clothing that people are wearing now versus what they wore back then. Back then it was more like I'm gonna cover myself up until it's time to maybe I'm like 4 weeks out, 6
Yep.
weeks out, and then everybody's like, "Holy crap, dude! What have you been doing?" But now, now you rarely ever see that. And more people are in the gym in like tank tops and short shorts and all that kind of thing. Like they're proud of their physiques, which I think is amazing.
Yep.
I also think it's amazing that in comparison to how I trained back then and the people that were in the gym, there's a lot more young people in the gyms now.
Oh, yeah.
At least the gyms that I'm seeing.
Yep.
A lot of young people, high school, young college age kids, and a lot of them are in the gym and they're crushing it, which I think is great.
Yeah, it's come more mainstream.
Yeah, you also see a lot more women in the gym.
Oh,
So
yeah.
back when I started bodybuilding, obviously that's how I met my wife, and there was a fair amount of fit gals
Yep.
in the gym. but there wasn't as many as there is now. You know, now there's so many gals in the gym, and they're deadlifting, squatting, and pressing, and they're super strong. Like if I would have ever saw a woman squat 300 pounds back then, I'd have been like, oh my God, this is insane. You know, and I think at the time, there may have been a handful of them that could do it, but now you see it so much because everybody has a platform.
Yeah.
Everybody has social media, and it's almost like that 4-minute mile type of analogy to where one person does it, and then it's like now it's like, oh well, she can do it. Now it's like and I can do it. So now for women to be strong is almost becoming more normalized, which
Definitely.
I love because it helps us out from a coaching perspective. Because if women are coming in and they're like, yeah, I've been lifting weights for 3 to 5 years, they have a lot more muscle than somebody that's coming in and they're like, Coach Zach, I've never worked out before. You know what I mean? And so therefore it's better for us to know that you have experience with resistance training, you're already strong, you already have the consistency and I guess the identity that you are somebody who lifts weights and identifies being strong for us to be able to help you reach your health and fitness goals. So I love that. I love the fact that there's so many ladies that are strong in the gym. I love the fact that there's so many young guys in the gym that are in there crushing it. You know, and I mean, honestly, bro, I used to think I was kind of strong, and now I'm seeing 18, 19, 20-year-old dudes in there just super strong, and I'm like, I need to get my game back up. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but it's in regards to, I guess, wrapping up the first part of this, like, find love and passion in becoming the strongest version of yourself. If you can do that, then every day you're going to wake up and it's about becoming the best version of yourself. Now, not to say you have to lift weights every day, but it is a progressive, I guess, experience over the course of time where you can go from maybe identifying as being a weaker person that maybe doesn't lift weights, and then you get to the point where now you're picking up the 20-pound dumbbells and you're squatting 100 pounds. And over the course of time, you develop 25s, 30s, 35s, 40s, 50s. There's confidence that comes along with that progressive overload in time, right? And then you identify as being a strong man, strong woman, right? And I think there's a lot of power in that. So my best tip of advice, take your time, you know, find love for training in the gym. You know, if you're brand new to this, take at least a year to build that confidence. You know, take at least a year to build a really solid foundation before you try to change things up.
Definitely. Find things that you're passionate in and that you want to improve in. And so I'm very passionate about people finding goals outside of their outside of work goals, because you know that's something that it's great to have something that you're passionate about outside of your profession, and something that you can progress on and improve in. That gives you, I guess, more meaning to life. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, you know, just life in general, health is a part of life. And if it's not, you're going to either face the reality now or you're going to face the reality later when you end up having to go to the doctor and he throws a bunch of prescriptions at you. Either way, you have to face that reality.
I think, you know, I know we're kind of moving off topic here, but that kind of takes me into our discussion that we had last night and even this morning. And I would say the importance of knowing where your health currently is, the importance of labs. If you don't mind going in a little bit into maybe some of the labs that you reviewed last night, that were a little bit shocking.
Jumping off topic a little bit, but that's okay. So health is important. How do we identify what health is? We can identify your health based off of having a good, comprehensive blood panel done. Now, we do go through a couple different streams to be able to get that blood work done. You can either go through Life Extension, or we have a partnership here in Tampa with Legacy Health and Wellness, and we've created our own educated dieter panel. Now, in some instances, the panel that I looked at last night, if she would have gotten that done from her primary care physician, I wouldn't have been able to spot what I spotted. But because of the fact that we know what to check for, we know the markers that need to be checked, we can ask and request that blood work to be done following a specific protocol. We then get those blood works back, we can take a look at them, and we can identify what's going on.
Yeah, the lab that you do for your health insurance isn't going to cut it.
Not going to
cut it. So
a
lot of people, you know, they find that that's the one lab panel they do a year. And a lot of times when they come to us, they think that's going to suffice. It really doesn't show us much at all. I mean, sure, it may show the things that are, you know, most crucial right at the moment. But in terms of optimizing your health, it's really not going to do much for us.
No, and unfortunately, I mean, in order to really like, and keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a doctor, okay, but to have the opportunity to actually help somebody like diagnose a legitimate health problem that could potentially save them 5 to 10 years or more on their life, that is a powerful thing to learn how to do. And last night, I was wrapping up work. I had gotten a lab panel back from one of the coaches that I mentor, and the individual. I'll just throw out a couple numbers.
Yeah.
But the blood glucose fasted was over 110. The A1C was, I believe, a 6.7, and then the insulin was actually in the 40s. And then C-reactive protein, which is, insulin was in the 40s. C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker, was also, I think it was in the 40s. And so therefore, right then and there, we could basically diagnose this person type 2 diabetes.
Yep.
If you take that panel to your primary care physician, granted, you'll probably have to go through a rabbit hole of seeing experts and so on and so forth, but eventually you're going to end up with 2 prescriptions. One of them is for insulin, one of them is for metformin or
Yep.
something that's going to help you regulate your blood glucose. The good news is we spotted it. And the good news is also with my help and her combined, we're going to be able to fix this case.
Yeah.
But she was struggling to get this client any result, even though the client was 350 to 400 pounds, somewhere in that range. And they've got her eating a good amount of calories, healthy spread of macronutrients, but they just couldn't figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
well, how are you not losing weight, but you weigh this much and you're eating this and there's no weight that's coming off? She's even gaining weight on 1,700 calories. So therefore, what we have to identify is a simple fact that, like, there's more to understand than just the macros. There's more to understand than just the calories in, calories out aspect. Because if all you did was adjust her macros, you never know the fact that her
She's never gonna see results.
inflammatory markers were in the 40s. We're talking about heart attack stuff.
Yep.
Right? Now, by us spotting that, are we therefore able to potentially save her years of her life? It's no different than when I worked with my mom and she lost 110 pounds.
Exactly.
Right? She was working with her doctor for over 10 years. They never once addressed her lifestyle, her eating habits, or anything. I come in, we do that, she loses 110 pounds, and she's using less insulin, less medication than she's ever used before, and she regulates her weight with her diet.
Exactly.
So the cool thing is we're going to be able to do very similar things with this client. And so the best tip of advice, Zach, I'm happy you brought that up, but get some blood work done. Like, it's not hard. All you got to do is just find a source. You could even come to us. We'll send you our protocol and a link for free. Get your blood work done. So at least, therefore, you can identify what may not be in range, what may be suboptimal, what may be high, what may be low, whatever. Either way, you are bringing the truth to your health.
Yep.
And I think that's very important. Okay, moving forward. Next topic of conversation is from dehydrated to full.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we were talking about this off air, but I had a tremendous conversation with a gentleman yesterday that right now, I mean, he's just super dehydrated, super flat.
12 days out from a show.
He's 12 days out from a show. He's about to get ready to go through a dehydration protocol and the potassium load, the whole nine. And so we're not going to dive into his specific deal, but we're going to more so tackle this from a general perspective, and we're going to talk about our best pump products for the gym.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind that the best pump products may not even be products at all. They could just be superfoods.
Yep.
Right? So let's go ahead and let's start off there. If you wanted to go to the gym, Coach Zach, which you do, I believe, 5 or 6 days a week, and you want to get the best pump possible, what would be some of the products that you would implement?
Product.
Or foods, or minerals, electrolytes, anything.
Something that has citrulline in it, I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
Beta-alanine doesn't have to be a high enough dose that is making you want to scratch your face off because you're itching so bad.
Scratch your face off.
I hate that feeling. And then obviously, like sodium. Sodium is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand maybe in that case that you were just discussing that may not be something that I don't know who his coach was, maybe not be something he's utilizing at this point. A lot of times people want to manipulate sodium drastically.
Yeah.
But for 99% of the year, I don't think it's something for most people that needs to be manipulated in a way that they're controlling sodium, especially if they're someone who is extremely active. So I like to use sodium as a performance enhancer.
For sure.
And that's just simple salt. You don't need to be going to these supplement companies and buying salt. And so I know which we were just discussing as well. Go to your grocery store and just get some salt. If you want to use full-on electrolyte products, excellent. And so, yeah, but I usually like to add a little bit more sodium to that as well. Some of my favorites are just things that contain niacin. And so that's as simple as juice. I like to use maybe pomegranate juice, tart cherry, or beet, something to increase nitric oxide, a vasodilator. And so I know we were just discussing that as far as maybe even a little more vascular, having better pumps. I think that's excellent because you're also getting your carbohydrates through that as well. So it's some intracarbohydrates. You can be getting that as well as some niacin through those, using those products.
Yeah, interestingly enough, this gentleman actually hasn't been allowed salt for like the last 8 weeks.
Okay,
it's just not, it's something that this specific coach just removes.
Interesting, especially when his carbohydrates, you said, were down to 20 grams.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's crazy. But anyway, so without sodium, it's very important to understand that you are losing one of the key transporters of delivery into the muscle.
Yep.
Right? So with a high amount of sodium, it doesn't have to be a high amount of sodium, but I mean, at least I'd say for bodybuilding purposes, considering the amount that you're sweating in the gym and so on and so forth, probably between at least 3 to 6 grams of salt per day, I think is relatively pretty good.
And as carbohydrates come down, I usually like to bring sodium up.
Go up. More. Yeah, it makes sense. So even like your muscle contractions fire better when you're properly hydrated.
Yeah.
Right? Think about having no salt in your muscles. How are your muscles supposed to contract?
Yep. How
are you supposed to force fluid into the muscle without the primary driver, which is sodium?
Yep.
The scary thing is in this regard is that people will in most cases reduce sodium because they think it's going to make you quote unquote hold water.
Yep.
Which you're going to hold water inside your muscle, which makes the muscle look bigger.
Yep.
You're going to have sodium flowing throughout your body, which makes your veins pop out. Like, this is good stuff for bodybuilding. But I say all that just to mention the fact that if you are going through a dehydration style of protocol of some sort, your coach told you don't eat sodium, ignore that. It's crap information. You need to not do that, especially if they're telling you to load potassium. Keep in mind that if you're loading potassium, you're decreasing sodium. There are a lot of negatives that can happen with regard to irregularities in your heart.
Cardiac function, for sure.
For sure. And I would say that many of the, not all of them, but I have seen them, but there are a lot of deaths that occur in the sport of bodybuilding because of the fact that you are, from
just due to
very
these
high
protocols
amounts, you're
in those last
manipulating
few
too many
weeks.
things.
Yeah, exactly. And then, toss in diuretics, and there's another thing added to the storm. And so it's an archaic way of thinking as far as severely manipulating sodium.
So if we're going to think about, like, I want to get a great pump in the gym, think about this. 32-ounce bottle, 20-ounce shaker, whatever you want to do, maybe half water, half pomegranate, beet, or tart cherry juice.
Yeah.
Maybe put a gram of sodium inside of that. If you want to add something like beta-alanine, glycerol, citrulline, something like that, add that to that, and then drink that whole thing down about 30 minutes before you even get to the gym, and your pump will probably be insane.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, awesome.
People with, a lot of times the stim junkies can actually be doing themselves a
disservice.
Yeah. And so at that point, I would also not take some of these products that maybe contain 400, 500 grams of milligrams of caffeine, which is crazy. And so that's a vasoconstrictant. And so it's kind of doing the opposite of what you want to use. A little bit of caffeine, excellent, awesome. Get you, get you in that mindset and give you a little bit of extra energy. But I don't think you need to be going.
No, definitely not. If you're going high stim, I don't know what the craziest stim pre-workouts now are, but back in my day, you had the Jack 3D, you had
that was literal crack.
What was it? Jekyll and Hyde
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde,
was
yeah.
the first one that I think hit like 300 or 350 mgs. And you were telling me off air, there's some that have 400 or
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
And so the thing that you want to think about, and I'll give you a story about this real quick too. So back in my adrenal insufficiency days, where I was just exhausted all the time, and I'm just like pounding bangs,
Yeah.
whenever I would drink a Bang Energy, and then I would try to go to the gym. Now, granted, that was the highest stim stuff that I probably ever drank, and I think there's 300 or
Yep.
325 per can. And I would drink a can of that, and on the days that I would do that, I'd go into the gym to try to train, and I never felt like I could get that flush, full muscle.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like I could feel like my fibers of my muscle like trying to contract, but I couldn't get a good pump. And I think it's because of the fact that caffeine in a very high amount is actually more vasoconstrictive,
Yep.
right? So it can actually constrict blood flow versus trying to open blood flow. So we still do recommend for performance enhancement, like, yeah, maybe 100 milligrams, 200 milligrams of
Yep.
caffeine, but anything going into the 3, 4, 5, 600 range, I mean, is just insane.
Yeah.
And you're not even going to be able to open up those pathways to allow the blood and the water and the salt to get into the muscle.
Yep.
So for what it's worth, ladies and gents, nothing wrong with caffeine, just don't abuse it. And then hopefully that little concoction that we provided you helps you out. Last but definitely not least, we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive into natural sport supplementation and things that we recommend for our clients. So I'll start us off here. Whey protein isolate, I think tried and true. A lot of the clients that we work with, maybe they have a struggle hitting their protein goal.
Yes.
And even adding in maybe a scoop for a woman or 2 scoops a day for a man can dramatically make that, hitting that protein goal a lot easier.
Exactly. And so that's the thing is I have people think of protein, like whey and things like that in a different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Many people, consider it a supplement just like it is, but I have them look at it more as a food. And
Mm-hmm.
so your body, your body's going to utilize it just like it utilizes, chicken breasts, egg
Mm-hmm.
whites, things like that.
Yeah.
And if it makes your life a little bit easier in terms of hitting your protein numbers, and you digest it well, then yeah, don't worry about, oh well, I know I shouldn't be drinking all my protein or this and that.
Right.
Whatever it takes. And so if you digest it well, your body's going to use it just like it does some of those other food groups.
I mean, one of the things that I used to do a lot back in the day, I don't know if it's still a thing, but when I was bodybuilding, I'd always do 2 scoops of whey protein isolate with like the blender ball,
Mm-hmm.
And I do usually half a cup to a cup of oatmeal.
Yep.
And then I would do usually a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, and I just put it in a shaker and I shake it up. That's a meal replacement.
It is, yeah.
Right? I mean, you're getting all the fats you need, the carbohydrates, the fiber, the protein. And if I was at all concerned with like insulin and so on and so forth, I mean, you just add a little bit of cinnamon to it.
Yep.
Just to slow down that insulin spike. But other than that, that was something that was a go-to. So whenever I would
I
travel,
use that as a meal all the time.
I'd be at bodybuilding shows. It's easy. Just pull it out, put
Yep.
it in a shaker cup. Blah, 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 blah. Make sure you wash it out though, ladies and gents, because that thing will stink to the heavens.
Yeah, I can't tell you
if
how
you
many
don't
shaker
clean out
bottles
that
I've
bottle.
had to just throw away. Yeah, if you leave it in your car, just toss it. Don't
Yeah.
even open it up. It's
Yeah.
not worth it.
Yeah.
You're never getting that smell out of there.
Next up, we'll talk creatine monohydrate. Now, obviously, creatine is becoming even more popular now than I think it
Out
was
of
back in
nowhere,
the
I
day.
feel like right now it's like it's peak of
It's came back.
popularity.
It's came back for sure. Now we do recommend creatine. I know we talk about creatine quite a bit, but the benefits of creatine monohydrate, I don't think we can speak about them enough. So if you're not utilizing creatine monohydrate, we would highly encourage you to utilize creatine. And just as a general recommendation, maybe we're talking 3 grams, maybe up to 5 grams for a more muscular woman.
Yep.
And then potentially 4 or 5, maybe up to 6 or 7 grams for a more muscular man.
Yep.
But I think it also is predicated on how much lean mass do you have to actually hydrate.
Yeah.
Right. And then you also have to understand that once you reach muscular hydration, and you are fully saturated, it doesn't make sense to keep going with the same amount, because then the extra creatine just kind of gets stuck in like this sub-Q layer, which can almost make you look a little bit more watery.
Yeah.
So I think that there is some validation to support, like, yeah, let's load it up until we're fully saturated, and then maybe you can taper it down a little bit.
Yeah. There's so many benefits to it, though, and so you'll always have people, am I someone who's a candidate for using creatine or anything like that? everyone is. I don't
Yeah.
care, elderly clients of ours, children. They've just shown so many benefits to it, not just in regards to body composition based goals or performance based goals, but they're even showing it be beneficial for people who deal with anxiety and depression and things like that, maybe getting to come off some of their SSRIs eventually, for cognitive performance, even showing with athletes as far as it being preventative in terms of concussions and things like that. So there's so many benefits to it, and I think that it's pretty awesome to see how it's becoming more and more mainstream and not just in the fitness space.
I agree. I think, and some of the people that are maybe my age, maybe a little bit older, that are watching this, you're gonna get it. But back in my day, I was one of the first kids that was taking creatine in high school.
Yep.
And I remember some of the other parents that were on the team. They kind of found out that I was taking creatine because their sons were telling Mom, I gotta get some creatine. I gotta get some creatine. And they're like, what is that, like steroids?
Yeah,
Exactly. And I'm like, no, I just take, I think it was, the first one I ever took was called Celtec.
Oh, yeah.
You remember?
I took it.
So Celtec, it had like 5 or 10 grams of creatine per scoop, and then it also had like 70 grams of sugar.
It was awful. It
And,
was like fruit punch
dude,
flavor. It was so bad.
Realistically, I mean, religiously, I drank that stuff after every workout. And I remember the first year I was on it, dude, I gained so much weight. I was just like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, this actually works, But granted, I was using the creatine. I was also lifting weights all the time. I was also eating a crazy amount of food because I was like 16 years old at the time. But it's just interesting to see how it's came all the way around full circle to where, society was like, oh my God, no, it's steroids, stay away.
Yeah.
And now it's like, everybody, including your grandma, should be taking creatine, All right, so next up, we got 3 more that I'm going to recommend. We're going to try to get through these pretty quick because we want to try to keep these podcast episodes under 30 minutes. So we got L-carnitine.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Obviously, great product. What it does, really good to use inside of a fat loss phase.
Excellent.
Or even if you're trying to force food. Because essentially what it does is it helps to shuttle glucose and fatty acids over the mitochondria to be utilized as
Yeah,
energy.
frees up fatty acids.
Right.
And so that's excellent. And so I, have a lot of people, if someone's, I know you're not comfortable with needles or anything like that, but if someone is comfortable with using injectable form, the absorption rate's much higher, but you can still utilize the oral form. Just I usually have those people increase their dosage because usually you're only seeing about a 30% absorption rate of that. But it's excellent. And so also if you have, and so I use this with female clients in fat loss phases. I also like to use it with males that maybe are, utilizing HRT or anything like that, just because it actually does, and so it sensitizes your androgen receptors, so they can actually even utilize less of their dosage and see an even better response. So,
I could also see it being a really powerful supplement for people that have insulin resistance.
100%, yeah.
Grab a hold of all that extra stored up glucose and get that crap out of the way.
It's excellent. So it's a great performance enhancer as well, and then even increases natural sex hormones as well. So it's
awesome.
an excellent product. Love L-carnitine.
Next up, magnesium.
Yeah, everyone should be
Big
utilizing that. So almost everyone is deficient in magnesium. So.
I would say even people that are athletic are more deficient than people that are not
100%.
athletic. So if you are an athlete and you are exercising in some capacity, typically we recommend anywhere between 3 and maybe 4, even up to 500 milligrams of magnesium per night before bed.
Yep.
It will help and basically make sure that you're not magnesium deficient, but it can also help to kind of calm your mind down a bit before bed, so it can help improve quality of sleep. And it also helps with gastric emptying, or just making sure that your bowels and your large intestine
100%.
are clean
So
and
many
you're going to the
benefits.
bathroom every day.
Yep.
Then vitamin D3 plus K2. The lab that I saw last night, the women's vitamin D was 13.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me at all.
Crazy. Yeah.
I would say if someone's not supplementing with vitamin D, I can't tell you the last time I've seen someone that has optimal vitamin D levels without supplementing.
Yeah.
So.
There's always, usually all the people that I see that have like, 50s and 57s and 65s and so on, they're like, yeah, I've been religiously using vitamin D for a long time.
Yeah.
I was using 10,000, now I'm using 5. And like, I remember back in the day when we first started talking about vitamin D supplementation and coaches were looking at us like, oh my God, no, like you can't recommend vitamin D. I'm like, everybody's deficient. Even people who live in Florida, for crying out loud. So like we started recommending 10,000 IUs a day and getting people's levels up to like 60, 70, 80, 90, and then backing them down to 5.
It works.
And it works great.
Also, an easy way, natural way to increase your hormonal profile, just because vitamin D in itself is a hormone transport.
For sure.
Bringing the actual sex hormones, such as testosterone, from its secretion site to a receptor site. And so it's excellent. Great natural way to increase your testosterone levels.
Perfect, man. I think that wraps up the podcast episode for today. So in this podcast episode, we walked through not being in a rush to compete or go into a fat loss phase. Take the time to build the muscle. We talked about how you can optimize your muscular fullness heading into the gym with proper hydration protocols. We also talked about natural sports supplementation. Coach Zach Ritchie,
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for driving up this morning to have this podcast episode. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. And let me remind you one more time that if you happen to have any questions for us, you can always hit us up on the social medias and we will answer your question in the next episode of Hey Coach Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you all, and we'll see you in the next one. Later.